Hello hockey fans, and welcome back to another video. Many of my North American viewers may not know this, but Great Britain has been playing the sport of hockey both domestically and internationally for well over a century. Sure, they may not be a powerhouse in the sport and are currently ranked the 19th best team in the world, but the place I call home was one of the founding members of the International Ice Hockey Federation back in 1908 and has even won an Olympic gold medal in the sport in 1936. The UK may not have produced a hockey superstar or won a gold medal at the Olympics for quite some time, but that doesn't mean we have been completely void of talent on the ice. Though most of our players spend their entire careers in the UK's elite ice hockey league, several British-born players, like Evan Mosey, Ben O'Connor, Robert Farmer and Mike Hammond, have spent parts of their respective careers playing in such leagues as the AHL, the ECHL, the Swedish Allsvenskan and the German DEL2. We've even had a couple of players selected in the later rounds of the NHL entry draft, with Colin Shields being drafted in the 6th round of the 2000 draft and Liam Kirk being chosen in the 7th round of the 2018 draft. These two players from an unconventional hockey nation have been given the opportunity to join an NHL franchise and try their luck at earning a spot in the best league in the world. However, one player from Scotland was able to grab the NHL's attention decades before his fellow countrymen. This is the story of Tony Hand, the first British draft pick in NHL history. Before we begin, I just want to mention that over 80% of you who have watched my videos this month have not subscribed to my channel, so if you do enjoy this video and you want to see more like it in the future, consider hitting that subscribe button. It would really help me out a lot, folks. But anyways, on with the video. In order to tell this fascinating tale, allow me to take you back to September 20th, 1981. The Scottish National League's Murrayfield Racers were set to face off against their rivals the Fife Flyers, but didn't have the requisite number of skaters available since they were dealing with a shortage of players. In order to rectify this, the Racers added local prospect Tony Hand to their roster, giving the 14-year-old his first opportunity to play in a professional hockey game. Though he would be held off the scoresheet in his debut that night, Hand would stick with the Racers for much of the 81-82 season, finishing the year with 4 goals and 11 points in 22 games. Having impressed the Racers coaching staff in his first outing with the team, Hand would join the Racers for the following 82-83 season as Murrayfield began their first outing in the British Hockey League. Despite his young age and lack of experience, the teenager would light the lamp for his hometown side, as he finished his sophomore season with 18 goals and 39 points in just 22 regular season games, as well as 3 points in 2 playoff games. Averaging almost 2 points a game as a 15-year-old in Britain's Premier Hockey League either means that Hand was a once-in-a-generation kind of player who was destined for far greater things in far better leagues, or he was a pretty solid prospect playing against mediocrity at best. Regardless of whether it was the former, the latter, or a bit of both, Hand's lengthy, high-scoring career was only just getting started. Over the next 3 seasons, the Scottish forward would continue to play for the Racers and score at a pretty astonishing pace, notching 52 goals and 95 points in just 30 games during the 83-84 season, before posting back-to-back 164-point seasons in 84-85 and 85-86. Between the ages of 17 and 18, Hand scored 328 points in just 68 BHL games. Oh, and he also added 50 points in 12 playoff games during that time span too, just in case you wondered if he was also a clutch playoff performer as well. With 473 points in just 142 games over 5 seasons with the Racers, it was clear that Hand was too good for the British League, and folks around the hockey world were beginning to take notice. Having received a Young Player of the Year award in 1986, included with the award was an invitation to join the Calgary Flames for their pre-season training camp, where Hand would get the opportunity to train with an NHL franchise that had recently made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals. Though he would soon make the trip across the pond and take his talent to Alberta, it wouldn't be for the Flames. On June 21st, 1986, it was announced that the Edmonton Oilers had selected 18-year-old Tony Hand with the 252nd overall pick in the 12th round of the 1986 NHL Draft. In doing so, Hand became the first player both born and trained in Great Britain to be selected in the NHL entry draft, a feat that has been repeated just twice in the 34 years that have followed. After being selected with the final pick of the draft, Hand was invited to attend the Oilers training camp before the upcoming 86-87 NHL season. Despite breaking his one and only stick on the first day of camp, and having to borrow a new one from Oilers enforcer Marty McSorley, Hand ended up playing well enough that he wasn't cut from the camp and spent the entire 2 weeks with the team. Not only that, but the Scottish forward got the opportunity to play alongside such greats as Wayne Gretzky and Mark Messier, earning high praise for his great ability to read the ice and being touted as the smartest player there other than Wayne Gretzky by Oilers coach Glenn Sather. Hand's performance would impress Sather so much that the Oilers general manager immediately offered Hand a contract to spend a year with Edmonton's junior team. However, he decided to turn down the offer and instead joined the WHL's Victoria Cougars, whom he had trained with briefly just before the draft. Unfortunately though, Hand's time in Canada wouldn't last as long as he or anyone else would have expected. The 12th round pick would get the 86-87 season off to a good start by scoring 8 points in 3 games with the Cougars, but after spending a month or two in North America, Hand decided to return home to Scotland and rejoin the Murrayfield Racers. Though it might seem a little strange for a prospect as productive and highly praised as Hand to just pack up his things and return to a lesser league in the UK, Hand supposedly felt very homesick during his time across the pond and was exhausted from the amount of training, playing, and press commitments he faced while in Canada. Instead of trying his best to push through it and carry on until the end of the season, he elected to head home with the promise that he would return to the Oilers training camp the next year. Say what you want about his decision, but I think it takes balls to admit that you're just not ready to commit to that kind of lifestyle yet. He could have easily carried on playing with Victoria and let his exhaustion reflect on his overall happiness and on-ice production, but he knew it was better for him both short-term and in the long run to go back home, spend time with his family, and feel more comfortable with familiar surroundings. After all, not every teenager is ready to move to the other side of the world by themselves in pursuit of a potentially unattainable dream. But I digress. The Scottish forward's brief trip across the pond seemed to work wonders for his game when he arrived back home, as he would put the puck in the back of the net even more than before he left. In just 35 games during the 86-87 BHL season, Hand scored 105 goals and 216 points. That's almost a hat-trick and 6 points every single game. He also scored 28 points in just 6 playoff games, en route to helping the Murrayfield Racers clinch the British National League Championship, so it's safe to say he had a pretty successful year all things considered. Once the season came to an end, Hand headed back to North America for round 2, briefly training with the Victoria Cougars before attending the Oilers training camp once again. When Sather offered him another contract, this time to play with Edmonton's farm team, the Nova Scotia Oilers, surprisingly, Tony Hand decided to turn him down once more. The reason for this was because Hand didn't want to get stuck playing in the junior system and potentially earn less money in North America than what he was already contracted to make in his deal with the Murrayfield Racers. Years later in his autobiography, Hand would admit that this decision was likely a mistake, and that he should have renegotiated his contract in order to find a more suitable arrangement for both parties. In the foreword of that same book, Glenn Sather expressed his disappointment that Hand didn't accept his deal, as he felt that the Scottish forward could have progressed through the North American system, maybe even made it to the NHL, and been celebrated as a pioneer of British hockey. This decision by Hand turned out to be the final nail in the coffin for his potential career in both Edmonton and North America as a whole. Though he would close the door on his opportunity to suit up in the NHL, the Scottish forward would certainly make this decision worth it in the years that followed. Once he returned home for the second and final time, Tony Hand would play solely in the United Kingdom for the rest of his career and cement his legacy as the greatest player in British hockey history. In a career that spanned over 4 different decades, Hand would suit up for some of the UK's top teams, such as the Sheffield Steelers, the Belfast Giants and the Dundee Stars, earn the nickname 2-Point Tony, and would go on to score a grand total of 1,228 goals and 3,565 points in just 1,309 regular season games, as well as 431 points in just 166 playoff games. In fact, Hand would score a total of 4,314 points across all competitions during his pro career, setting a new record for the most points ever scored by a professional hockey player. If that wasn't enough success, Hand would also set a bunch of British hockey records and earn a boatload of awards, such as 9 Leading Scorer awards, 4 Player of the Year awards, 4 Best British Forward awards, and 6 All-Star team places. If that doesn't sound like much, considering how incredible his career was, in most of the years that he didn't receive any of these accolades, they likely weren't being given out in the first place, especially early on in his career. Oh, and I haven't even mentioned his international career as part of Team Great Britain, where he scored 90 points in 49 games when Team GB played in Divisions 2 and 3 of the international circuit. He also helped Great Britain make an appearance at the 1994 World Championships, where they faced off against the likes of Russia, Canada and Germany, but he went scoreless in 6 games, as GB were promptly relegated back down to Division 2. Not his finest work by any means, but almost single-handedly getting his team into the competition, a tournament that features the best players that international hockey has to offer, is worth overlooking his scoreless performance if you ask me. Hand would be so successful and have such longevity during his career that he would continue to score at over a point per game pace into his mid to late 40s. From the 2000/01 season onwards, Hand would also serve as an assistant coach for his team alongside his playing duties, whilst also being the head coach of the Great British national team, even though he was still playing domestically and playing very, very well. On March 21st, 2015, 34 years after making his professional hockey debut as a 14-year-old, Tony Hand finally decided to call it a day on his playing career, scoring 11 goals and 57 points for the Manchester Phoenix during the 14-15 season, before hanging up his skates for the final time at the ripe old age of 47. Following the conclusion of his playing career, Tony Hand would continue to be active in the British hockey world by finally taking his talents behind the bench full-time. The former 12th round pick would transition into the head coach role for the Manchester Phoenix and fill the position between 2015 and 2017, before spending a year coaching the Great Britain under-20 squad in 17-18. Hand would also be inducted into the IIHF Hall of Fame, receiving the Richard Bibi Toriani Award for his outstanding career as a player from a non-top hockey nation. Since his Hall of Fame induction, Hand has spent the last 2 years serving as both the director and head coach of the newly revived Murrayfield Racers, the team he himself brought to relevance as a player during the 80s and 90s, and a job he still proudly serves to this day. Though he never took to the ice in the NHL or suited up in another top league around the world, when Tony Hand was drafted by the Edmonton Oilers in June of 1986, he helped to shine the spotlight on the British system, put the UK back on the hockey map, and inspire the next generation of British hockey hopefuls to chase their dream of playing in the bigs, a dream he will continue to encourage for generations to come. We'll never truly know what would have happened if he had stuck around in North America, but I think it's fair to say that Hand made the right decision in the long run and produced one hell of a record-setting career. After all, whether you play against the best skaters in the world or you suit up in a lesser league back home, you don't get to play over 1,000 games or score over 4,000 points if you're a bad hockey player now, do you? I guess sometimes 12th round draft picks can be full of surprises. And that's the story of the first British draft pick in NHL history. What do you guys think about Tony Hand's illustrious career? Do you think he would have made it to the NHL? Let me know in the comments below. I would love to know what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys. I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye. A big thank you to Antti Hannanen, Chris Gadsby, Connor B, Jordan Whitehead, Paul Mallia, Roman from London, The Legacy, and Worthless Pieces, as well as a huge thank you to Max Artis for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further, and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.